My name is Sarah Kendall, and I've spent my life protecting what little we have left. But the morning my sister Rachel laughed in my face and called me nothing but a farmhand in mud, I realized this fight wasn't about sibling rivalry. It was a declaration of war for our grandmother's legacy. And trust me, I don't lose what I love without a battle. Before we dive in, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The morning started like any other on Grandmommy's Kentucky farm, early and earthy. Dew still clung to the pasture, and the rooster hadn't quite figured out if it was late or early, so he kept crowing as if someone owed him an answer. I was elbow-deep in feed for the chickens behind the coop when I heard the sound of tires on gravel, a sharp, foreign crunch that never meant anything good. And there she was, Rachel. My younger sister by 4 years, though she wore the age difference like a crown and me like a stain. She stepped out of her shiny sedan like the queen of somewhere that didn't grow corn or own work boots. Nude heels in chicken yard mud, designer sunglasses before sunrise, and a smirk that sliced sharper than any blade in the shed. "Well," she said, glancing at my mud-caked overalls, "looks like you're right where you belong." I didn't flinch. I just brushed my hands against my thighs and looked her dead in the eye. "Enjoy your mud," she added with a sugary venom. "You don't deserve anything better." Her words didn't land like a joke. They landed like a slap. I stood straighter, taller, because I had nothing to lose and nothing to prove to her. "Better mud than lies," I snapped. And just like that, the air between us exploded. "You think you're some kind of martyr out here," she hissed. "You're playing house with Grandma like it's noble. Newsflash, Sarah, nobody cares about this dump but you. And yet here you are," I barked. "Drove all the way from your manicured life to insult me on a Tuesday morning. Because someone needs to say it, you're squatting here like a guard dog. Because someone needs to protect her." Our voices tangled with the sound of squawking hens as the shouting match carried into the dirt and dust. Old anger mixed with fresh betrayal. And somewhere beneath it all, something ancient boiled, a rivalry older than our understanding. We didn't hear Grandmommy's footsteps, just the silence that followed them. Her hand, wrinkled and trembling, landed softly on my shoulder. "That's enough," she said, her voice thin but still the authority of the land. Rachel huffed, brushed invisible lint off her blouse, and rolled her eyes. "Me," she said coolly. "I was just trying to make conversation." "You come here once every few months just to pick fights," me replied. "Don't act like your tongue's a ribbon." It shut Rachel up for a moment, but not for long. She adjusted her sunglasses, gave a dismissive glance toward the fields, and started walking back to her car. "Good luck with your mud," she tossed over her shoulder with a laugh. "Maybe it'll make you grow a spine." I watched her drive off, her tires spitting rocks, her engine louder than necessary. And still the only thing louder than that car was the silence she left behind. I looked at Grandma. Her hand still trembled. "I'm sorry," I whispered. She just shook her head and gave my hand a soft squeeze. But her eyes, they were glassy with something unspoken. Rachel may have driven off, but she didn't leave. She stuck something in the air, something poisonous and ugly. And it was settling into the soil like a seed we didn't ask for. The question was, what would grow from it? That evening, the sun hung low like it knew the day had been too long. The sky above the hills turned that deep, syrupy orange that only happens when the air is thick with late summer heat and something unspoken. I was sitting on the porch steps, picking bits of hay from my jeans, when I heard the creak of the screen door behind me. Grandmommy stepped out slowly, wrapped in the same shawl she'd worn every night since I was 10. It smelled like cedar, peppermint, and old stories. "Room for two?" she asked, her voice warm, worn, and impossible to say no to. I shifted to the side, and she lowered herself into the rocking chair with a practiced sigh. The kind that carried decades. We didn't speak for a while. The porch settled into a rhythm, creaking wood, chirping crickets, the occasional hoot from the barn owl who thought he owned the place. Then me finally broke the quiet. "She wasn't raised to treat family like that," she said, gently rocking back and forth. I didn't respond right away. What could I say? That Rachel was selfish. That she only came around when something was being handed out. Me already knew all that. "She's not wrong, though," I said eventually. "About me staying here, about this place." "Sarah," she murmured, her voice gentle but firm. Don't do that. I stared out across the field. Fireflies blinked in and out of the tall grass like tiny lanterns unsure of where to land. I just mean maybe she's not wrong to wonder why I'm still here, I said. Maybe I am wasting my life out here feeding chickens and fixing fences no one cares about. Me didn't say anything. She just reached over and took my hand. It was such a simple gesture, but I swear it felt like she was holding me together. You think what you're doing isn't important? She asked after a while. I think it doesn't matter to anyone but you and me, I replied, the words coming out too fast, too raw. She looked at me then, really looked. And in that moment I saw her. Beneath the gray hair and the lines carved deep by wind and worry, I saw the young woman who'd once chased a loose calf barefoot through the creek, who lost a husband too early, who kept a farm alive when everyone said to sell. She squeezed my hand. Then it matters. That's all she said. Not a speech, not a lecture, just those 3 words said like a prayer. And somehow it was enough. I swallowed hard. I don't know how you're still so kind after everything this family's put you through. She smiled, just a little. I'm not kind, I'm just tired. We sat in silence again. The kind that only happens when 2 people love each other enough to let the quiet speak for them. Eventually, Me tilted her head toward the barn. You remember that summer the fence kept falling down? I nodded. Yeah, the cows kept escaping. You said if it fell one more time, we'd just let them go live free in Tennessee. Me laughed, the sound like an old song with a forgotten chorus. You rebuilt that fence 6 times, she said, while Rachel was out chasing boys at the mall. I was chasing something too, I muttered. I just didn't know what. Me stopped rocking. You were chasing roots, she said. Rachel's always been looking for wings. You were planting things. A pause, then. She never understood that staying is just as brave as leaving. The words hit somewhere deep. I blinked back the sting in my eyes and tried to laugh it off. I'm not brave, I said. But Me just looked at me again, her eyes sharp now. You're still here, she said. That's brave enough. Just then the porch light flickered. A moth hit the screen with a soft thunk. Somewhere out in the barn, the wind nudged the old weather vane into a spin. I leaned my head back and stared at the stars. Do you ever wish you'd left? I asked her softly. Sometimes, she said, but then I remember what I built. Another pause. And who I built it for. My throat tightened. I didn't have to ask if she meant me. I already knew. Me squeezed my hand once more before letting go. I'm going to bed, she said, slowly rising from the rocker. Don't stay out too long. I won't. She stopped in the doorway. And Sarah? Yeah. Don't let anyone make you feel small, especially not someone who doesn't even know how to plant tomatoes. I smiled as the screen door creaked shut behind her. The stars hung low, fireflies lit up the fields like quiet miracles, and for a moment I let myself breathe. Whatever was coming next, whatever Rachel and the others were planning, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't just guarding a farm. I was guarding her legacy. And I'd do it barefoot in the mud if I had to. The day of the family dinner, the sky looked too perfect. One of those crisp Kentucky afternoons where the breeze smelled like wild mint and honeysuckle, and even the flies seemed too polite to buzz. Under the big oak tree by the fence line, Mama laid out the red-checkered cloth like it was a holiday and not a strategy meeting. I helped her set the table. Wooden bowls of potato salad, cornbread fresh from Me's cast-iron skillet, roast chicken that smelled like Sunday mornings, and a peach cobbler sweating under a crust too golden to trust. Rachel arrived in linen and lip gloss, dragging her smugness like a designer handbag. Isn't this quaint? She said as she sat down, like she'd just discovered country charm on Pinterest. I didn't say a word, just handed her a glass of sweet tea and made sure she had a spoon with a crack in the handle. Small victories. Daddy, Roger poured himself a drink and sat at the head of the table like he always did, even though we all knew Me should be there. But Me was quiet today. She sat off to the side, watching everyone with that soft, unreadable look that made me nervous. The kind of look she used to give before storm warnings. We passed plates, smiled through old stories, and chewed carefully, not on the food but on each other. Elaine, my mother, wiped her mouth delicately and said, "Isn't it time we talked about Me's next chapter?" My fork paused midair. Next chapter. Roger nodded slowly, folding his napkin like he was building a case. You've been taking such good care of the place, Sarah, but it's a lot for one person. And for me too. We've been talking and, well, we just want what's best for everyone. I didn't respond. Because that sentence, we just want what's best for everyone, never meant what it sounded like. It meant, we've made a decision and now we're pretending it's for your sake. Rachel chimed in, swirling her tea like it had answers. There's this charming little retirement community just outside of Lexington. So cute. Heated pool, movie nights, the whole deal. Me's eyes flicked toward her, but she didn't say anything. Me could use a little peace, Elaine added. This farm's too much for her now, too much for anyone, really. I looked down at my biscuit, suddenly dry in my mouth. Then I looked at their hands. That's when I saw it, Mama's hand resting on Daddy's knee under the table, fingers curling tight. A secret signal. And Rachel caught my eye, just for a second, not a glare, not a smirk, something worse. Flicker of triumph, that's when I knew they'd rehearsed this. This wasn't concern, this was a coup. Well, I said slowly, swallowing hard, funny how y'all never thought it was too much for me until now. Roger chuckled. Come on now, it's not like that. Isn't it? I asked, keeping my voice calm, because it sure sounds like you've already made up your minds. Elaine leaned in. No one's trying to push anyone, honey. We're just thinking about what makes sense. What makes sense? I echoed. For who? Rachel snorted. Oh, come on, Sarah. Don't act like you're not overwhelmed. You've been here so long it's like you've turned into one of the cows. Rachel, Me said quietly. Rachel blinked, then smiled like nothing had happened. Just saying, maybe it's time we all moved forward. Silence settled like dust. Even the cicadas seemed to hush. I bit into my biscuit, my teeth clenching harder than the crust. They weren't just talking about me. They were talking about this land, this soil, this house, this legacy. They wanted it, and they wanted me out of the way. Across the table, Me still said nothing. But she was watching. Not them, me. And in her eyes, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. Not fear, not sorrow, but a challenge, like she was waiting to see what I would do next. That night, the barn creaked like it knew something I didn't. The loft had always been my hiding place, my thinking place. Dust hung in the air like old breath, and the rafters above caught the last slivers of moonlight through the cracked roof. I lay flat on the hay-strewn boards, staring up, trying to keep my heartbeat steady. But the dinner wouldn't leave me. Not Mama's tight smiles. Not Rachel's sugary cruelty. Not Daddy's calm, practiced tone, like he'd already worked this whole thing out and was just waiting for me to nod along. They were planning something. That wasn't dinner talk. That was a setup. I sat up slowly, the wood cool against my skin where my shirt had ridden up. My eyes scanned the old shelves, rusted tools, ropes coiled like lies, a few photo albums sealed in plastic bins to protect them from mice and time. I stood, heart thudding. They want the land. That truth struck clean, hard, undeniable. Not just to help me, not because they worried, but because they smelled money in the dirt. This place, it had history, sure, but it also had value. Hundreds of acres that hadn't been appraised in decades. And with the new road expansion coming through next county over, developers had already started poking around, asking questions, sending flyers we'd crumpled without reading. I remember Rachel joking once, drunkenly, during Christmas, that we were all sitting on a gold mine covered in cow poop. Back then, I'd laughed. Now I could barely breathe. I reached for the old cedar box Me kept up here. Tucked beneath faded quilts and brittle tax records, I found it, framed in a chipped wooden frame, Me at 17, astride a chestnut horse, wind in her hair and fire in her eyes. She looked invincible. I held the photo close and whispered to the dust. "They're vultures, Grandma." My voice cracked. I lowered myself to the floor, photo in hand, knees drawn to my chest like I was 12 again and hiding from the storm. But this time, the storm wasn't in the sky. It was in my veins. "They want to push you out," I said softly, as if Me could hear me across the field in her room. "They want the title, the deeds. They'll say it's for your good, but it's not. It's for their wallets." The horse in the photo looked right at me, frozen mid-stride, like it knew I needed to move, not sit here talking to ghosts. "I'm not letting them touch this place." The words came out low, steady, like I was reading them from stone. I stood. Not one board, not one acre, not while I'm still breathing. Outside, the wind picked up. Thunder grumbled low in the hills like a warning, but I didn't flinch. I looked out across the field from the loft window, and for the first time in days, I didn't feel confused or cornered. I felt sure. Because they may have shown up in clean clothes with fake concern and dinner invitations, but I'd seen what was underneath. And it wasn't love. It was greed dressed in Sunday best. I didn't have a plan yet, but I had a line, and they were about to cross it. The lightning flashed behind the hills, and this time I smiled. Let the storm come. The smell of cinnamon and lies filled the kitchen. It was 3 days after the dinner. Rachel had disappeared back to wherever she called home, probably with her heels scrubbed clean and her conscience even cleaner. But Mama stayed behind, said she wanted to help me organize some things. I didn't buy it. I was in the kitchen when she cornered me. Elaine, my mother, stood by the counter like she was there to offer me a cookie, not a bombshell. "Can we talk?" she said sweetly, holding a manila folder like it was a gift. I dried my hands on a dish towel and raised an eyebrow. "Sure." She placed the folder on the table between us. I didn't open it, just looked at her, waiting. "It's just some ideas," she said lightly. "Options for me." I flipped it open. Brochures. A dozen glossy pages showing luxury retirement homes, polished dining rooms, smiling nurses. One even had a golf cart on the cover. "Places where she'll be safe," Mama added, as if the page wasn't vibrating in my hands. "Places that can really care for her." I looked up, calm but cold. "You think she's not safe here?" Elaine's smile wavered. "She's getting forgetful, Sarah. You know it. She left the stove on last month." "She turned it off a minute later," I snapped. "Because she remembered." Mama took a breath. "That's not the point. She's vulnerable. And if something were to happen—" "Stop," I said flatly. Her mouth opened, closed. Then she straightened and the mask slipped just enough for me to see it wasn't about concern, it was control. "She trusts you," she said slowly. "She listens to you, that's why I'm asking, talk to her, convince her." My stomach twisted. "You want me to lie?" Mama's eyes narrowed. "Don't be dramatic." "No," I said. "You want me to sell her something wrapped in a smile. To tell her this is for her own good while you take everything she's built." Elaine crossed her arms. "Do you really think you're the only one who cares about her?" I stared her down. "I think I'm the only one not trying to bury her alive in linen sheets." Her face flushed red. "This farm is crumbling, Sarah. It needs more than love and chicken wire. It needs management, planning, someone who understands value." "I understand value just fine," I said quietly. "I've watched you all devalue her piece by piece for years." From the doorway, a sound broke the silence. Rachel's laugh. She was leaning against the frame, sipping coffee, wearing one of Me's sweaters like it was vintage fashion. "Did I miss the intervention?" she chirped. Elaine turned toward her. "She's being unreasonable." Rachel smirked. "Of course she is. Sarah's always been our sentimental martyr." I stepped forward. "And you've always been the opportunist," I said. "Guess we're both consistent." Rachel rolled her eyes and walked past me, brushing my shoulder just enough to make it intentional. "Whatever. Grandma's gonna end up where she belongs, whether you help or not." I turned to Mama. "I won't lie to her." Elaine sighed like I'd just disappointed a committee. "I thought you'd be more practical." "I am," I replied, grabbing the folder and shoving it back toward her. "I'm practical enough to see exactly what this is." Rachel leaned against the fridge, smirking. "Suit yourself. But don't come crying when she's moved and the rest of us are left figuring out what to do with this broken-down place." I looked around the kitchen, cracks in the tile, sunlight on the wood floor, Me's apron still hanging by the back door. This place was old, but it wasn't broken. The only thing broken was whatever made them think I'd help dismantle it. Without another word, I walked out, my boots loud against the floor. Outside, the wind was picking up, scattering dust across the yard, teasing the laundry line. Storms were coming, but I wasn't running. It was the silence that caught me first. Not the peaceful kind, the uneasy stillness that falls when something's not right, but no one's said it yet. The hens were quiet. Even the wind had stopped scratching the trees. Morning light spilled across the gravel like it was trying to warn me. I pulled on my boots, headed down the porch steps, and walked toward the mailbox like I did every day, half asleep, half hoping there'd be something other than bills. But the moment I opened the rusted lid, my breath hitched. There it was, a large, cream-colored envelope with a government seal stamped in the corner. Heavy, Official. Cold. The words on the front were stamped in bold. Notice of property transfer and sale, and just beneath it, in smaller print, involving the estate and assets of me, Kendall. My hands trembled. I tore it open on the spot, fingers clumsy, my pulse louder than the morning birds. Inside, crisp legal forms, notarized, dated. One phrase stopped me mid-breath: guardianship approval granted on medical basis. It felt like the ground gave out. They'd done it. They'd filed for guardianship, declared me incompetent, vulnerable, incapable of making her own decisions, and they hadn't said a word to me. I staggered back toward the porch, the letter still clutched in my hands like it might turn to dust. I sat hard on the steps, the wood groaning beneath me, and tried to reread the words, but they blurred at the edges. My parents, Elaine and Roger Kendall. Signed, dated, witnessed. They'd made it official. They'd gone behind me's back, behind mine, and filed paperwork to take control. Not just of her health decisions, but everything. Her property, her money, her rights. And it was all legal. The phone slipped from my pocket before I knew I was dialing. 10 minutes later, I was downtown. Fluorescent lights, fake plants, and the smell of toner hung thick in the law office like bad perfume. I sat across from a man in a gray suit who looked exactly like the kind of person who saw families like mine every day and didn't blink anymore. He adjusted his glasses as he scanned the forms. "It's legitimate," he said grimly. "Guardianship was granted 3 weeks ago." I felt like I'd been punched. "But how? I'm here every day. I didn't even know." He looked sympathetic but not surprised. "Kentucky law allows family members to file with a doctor's recommendation and 2 witnesses. If me didn't contest it and they likely kept it from her, it can go through quietly." Quiet, like betrayal in slippers. He flipped to the final page. "They've also filed intent to transfer property for sale. Once it clears probate, they can legally move her to a care facility and begin liquidating assets." Liquidating. Like me's life was a business going under, like our memories came with price tags. I stood up too fast, the chair scraping the floor behind me. "I have to stop this." The lawyer gave me a look that held both caution and compassion. "It'll be difficult, but not impossible, especially if you believe me wasn't properly evaluated or informed." I didn't believe it. I knew it. Me was still sharp, maybe slower than before, maybe quieter, but never incompetent. Never someone who'd willingly hand her life over to vultures in pearls and pastel cardigans. Back in my truck, I gripped the wheels so hard my knuckles went white. My own parents had done this. Signed papers behind locked doors, nodding and smiling while telling me to serve more sweet tea. And me had no idea. I drove home on autopilot, dust trailing behind me like the tail of something unraveling. When I pulled into the driveway, me was already sitting on the porch, her teacup in hand, rocking gently like she'd been waiting. Her face lit up when she saw me, but mine didn't move. I couldn't speak yet, not with what I knew, not with the storm that had just started inside me. I wasn't angry anymore. I was something deeper, something colder, something sharper. And I wasn't going to wait for them to steal one more breath of hers without knowing what it would cost them. Me's teacup clinked softly against the saucer as I sat beside her. The porch was quiet except for the faint creak of her rocker and the low hum of cicadas in the trees. The sun was beginning to dip behind the barn, casting long shadows across the yard, but I hadn't said a word since I came back. She watched me carefully, patiently, like she already knew something was wrong. "You've got your storm face on," she said gently. I looked at her, at the soft, sun-lined folds around her eyes, at the hair pulled back in a simple clip, at the woman who'd raised me on this porch with bare hands and bigger strength than anyone in this family. I couldn't hold it in. "They did it, Grandma," I whispered, my voice cracking. "They filed for guardianship, behind our backs." Her hands paused mid-rock. "Your name's on the papers," I continued. "They declared you incompetent, the property's being moved, it's legal. They didn't even tell me." Me didn't gasp, she didn't cry. She just set her teacup down with deliberate care and folded her hands in her lap. Her silence made it worse. I felt the tears come without warning, hot and full and shaking. "I should have seen it, I should have stopped it. I let them get too close." Me looked out across the field, her eyes distant. She nodded once, slowly. "I wondered what all that sweetness was for," she said softly. Your mama doesn't usually bring peach cobbler unless she wants something. Her voice wasn't bitter, just tired. I went to the lawyer, I said. They've already started the process to move you, retirement home in Lexington, they want to sell the farm. Me blinked slowly but didn't look shocked. I figured they would. You knew. I didn't know, she said, but I suspected. There's a certain smell to greed when it's kin, it's sweeter, more polite, but it still stinks. I laughed through a sob, wiping my face with my sleeve. Me reached over, took my hand, and held it tight. If they want to move me, they'll do it, she said quietly. But you, Sarah, you fight. The weight of her words sank into my bones. I wanted to argue, to scream, to rage against the way she spoke like she'd already accepted defeat. But her eyes, they weren't defeated. They were handing me something invisible but heavy. I will, I whispered. I promise I'll fix this no matter what. Me nodded once. That was all she needed. She picked her tea back up and took a sip. And just like that, the moment was sealed. I sat there beside her long after the sun disappeared. The porch light clicked on above us. The air grew cooler. The stars blinked awake, but something in me had changed. I had tried to hold the line. Now I was ready to draw a new one and dare anyone to cross it. Not just for the farm, not even just for me, but for every woman who's been told to sit still while men with pens and smiles wrote her life out from under her. They'd taken her rights. But they hadn't taken mine. Not yet. And I was just getting started. The next morning broke with a thick haze crawling over the fields as if the world itself wasn't ready to wake up. I didn't sleep. I barely changed. By 6:00 a.m., I was in the truck, hands gripping the wheel too tight, eyes locked on the road like it might disappear if I blinked. I didn't even tell me I was going, though some part of me still believed she'd be in her rocking chair when I got back, sipping tea like nothing had changed. But I knew. I'd called the number listed in the guardianship packet, asked for the address of the facility they planned to move her to. Sunny Pines Care and Wellness, the woman chirped, like it was a spa brochure. I didn't wait for the rest. I drove like something was chasing me. And maybe it was guilt, rage, panic. All knotted into a cold, hard lump in my chest that wouldn't go away. The facility was tucked into the hills outside Lexington, far too nice to trust. Big windows, pastel walls, manicured flower beds out front like a bribe. I walked through the glass doors and up to the front desk. "I'm here to see me Kendall," I said. The nurse's expression shifted the moment I said the name. She stood a little straighter. Her smile melted into something apologetic. "I'm sorry," she said gently. "Are you her granddaughter?" My heart dropped before she even said the next words. She passed in the night, peacefully. Around 2 a.m., the hallway behind her blurred. My ears rang. "What?" The nurse touched my arm lightly. "I'm so sorry. We tried calling her primary emergency contact. The records listed Elaine and Roger Kendall." I nodded slowly, but I wasn't hearing her. My body was in the lobby. My mind was still at home, on the porch where Me had squeezed my hand and told me to fight. "She was asking for you," the nurse added softly. "Kept saying your name before she drifted off." I didn't remember walking outside. I just remember the sky suddenly feeling too bright, the air too sharp. I stumbled toward the truck, fumbling for my phone. I didn't think. I just dialed. Mama answered on the second ring. "Sarah." "She's dead," I said. My voice was flat, deadpan. "Me's gone." A pause, just long enough to mean something. Then, "Oh, Sarah, I'm so sorry you had to find out that way." I didn't even let her finish. "You did this." "Now, honey, no." My voice cracked, but it didn't break. "You filed guardianship. You moved her without telling me. You didn't even let her say goodbye. She was declining, Sarah. She needed real care. We did what was best." I nearly dropped the phone from my hand. "Don't say that." "Sweetheart, this doesn't change anything." "It changes everything," I snapped. "You took her from her home, from the place she built with her own hands. You took her from me, and now she's gone." Rachel's voice cut in, apparently on speaker. "Don't act like she was going to live forever." I went still. "Excuse me." "Look," Rachel continued, voice dripping casual cruelty, "what's done is done. We need to focus on the next steps. The property is almost cleared." The lawyer said. "She's not even cold," I whispered. Rachel laughed short, ugly. "You think crying about it's going to bring her back?" That's when something inside me snapped. "I hope you're proud," I said. "I hope you enjoy every dollar you're clawing at, but just so we're clear, They went quiet. "I'm not done," I said, "not by a long shot." And then I hung up, because there was nothing left to say. Me was gone. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't know, is that her legacy didn't die with her. It just changed hands. And I was going to carry it, no matter what it cost me. Me's funeral was held under a weeping willow, the sky a soft gray curtain that never quite opened. It didn't rain. I almost wished it had. The dry air made everything feel too still, like even the heavens were holding their breath. The casket was simple, just like Me would have wanted. No brass embellishments, no glossy finish. Just smooth pine, her favorite quilt folded at her feet. I stood alone. No arm linked through mine. No umbrella shared. Just me in a black dress that didn't feel like mine, clutching a tissue I never used. Across from me, my parents huddled together. Elaine's sunglasses too large for the cloudy day. Roger's jaw tight like he was already calculating something. Rachel stood off to the side in heels far too tall for the grass, dabbing her eyes like a stage actress between acts. I didn't cry. The tears had come and gone in the empty hours after the call, after the drive, after the quiet nurse whispered words that stole the air from my lungs. Now there was only resolve. I stayed until everyone else left, watched the casket lower into the earth, watched the groundskeeper pat the dirt down like it was nothing more than a chore. Before I turned to leave, I whispered one thing. "They don't know you, but I do, and I'm not finished." A week passed. Then the lawyer called. "The will," he said. It was time. We met at a small office tucked behind the bakery in town, the kind of place where bad news came with the smell of sourdough. I arrived early, wearing Me's favorite cardigan over my shoulders like armor. My parents arrived exactly on time. Rachel was late, of course, clicking in with sunglasses and a latte she didn't offer to anyone. We all sat in a line like strangers in a waiting room, pretending we weren't preparing for war. The lawyer, a quiet man named Whitaker, cleared his throat and opened a manila envelope. His voice was steady, impersonal. "The last will and testament of Me Kendall, dated 6 months ago, notarized and witnessed with full mental capacity declared by her primary physician at the time." Elaine's fingers twitched. Rachel adjusted her sunglasses. Roger just leaned back, smug and silent. Whitaker continued. "To my daughter, Elaine Kendall, and her husband, Roger, I leave my sewing table and my recipe box. May they remember that some things take time and care." Elaine blinked. "To my granddaughter, Rachel, I leave my jewelry box with its contents as they are. May she find something worth more than sparkle." Rachel's mouth opened, closed, opened again. The silence in the room grew teeth. Then Whitaker turned one page further. "And to my granddaughter, Sarah Kendall." A pause. Everyone leaned in. "I leave all property, assets, and financial holdings in full." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. "Including, but not limited to, the Barkov farm, its 420 acres, all equipment, structures, and the contents of its banking account totaling." He paused again. Rachel actually laughed. "Totaling $10.4 million, primarily from oil rights leased in 2003 and untouched since." The air cracked. Elaine gasped. Roger muttered, "What money?" Rachel dropped her purse, the sound loud in the stunned quiet. "Excuse me," she said, her voice rising. "That can't be right. Oil rights, what oil rights?" Whitaker remained calm. "It's all documented, signed, sealed, and legally registered in Sarah Kendall's name before the guardianship was filed." Elaine stood. "This is fraud. Me wasn't well. This must have been coerced." He lifted another form. "Mental capacity evaluation attached. Dated, signed by her physician and 2 witnesses." Roger's voice was shaking now. "You're saying she knew, she hid this?" "I'm saying she prepared," Whitaker replied. Rachel stood, trembling with rage. "This is a lie. She manipulated her. She tricked her." "No," I said quietly, standing too. "She trusted me." They all turned to look at me. Elaine's face twisted into something between disbelief and disgust. "You think this makes you better than us?" "No," I said. "I think it makes me loved." And with that, I turned and walked out. Behind me, the room erupted, papers rustling, chairs scraping, voices rising. But I didn't look back, because Me had spoken. And now so would I. I didn't plan to go back that night. I told myself I'd stay in town, maybe grab a motel, let the dust settle. But my truck had other ideas, and so did something deep in my bones. The kind of pull that doesn't ask permission. the kind that comes from dirt and memory. By the time I turned down the gravel path, the sky was breaking open. Purple clouds rolled over the fields, and lightning forked across the horizon like veins of fire. The storm was here. So as the house stood quiet, but not still. I knew they'd follow me. I knew they wouldn't take that reading sitting down. And I was right. Their car was already parked out front, a luxury SUV that looked about as out of place on the farm as Rachel had last Easter when she asked where the quinoa station was. I stepped inside, mud still wet on my boots, heart pounding in my ears. Elaine was in the living room, pacing. Roger stood near the fireplace, arms crossed like a man trying not to panic. Rachel was by the window, phone in hand, whispering into it furiously before shoving it into her purse. "Well," she said when she saw me, "that was cute." I didn't answer. Elaine spun around. "How long have you known?" I dropped my bag on the table. "Since today, same as you." "Don't lie to me," she snapped. "I'm not the one who's been lying," I said, my voice low and sharp. Roger stepped forward. "Why didn't you tell us about the oil, about the money?" "Because it wasn't mine to tell." "You let us make plans," Rachel hissed. "You let us file guardianship." "I didn't let you do anything," I snapped. "You made your choice, you filed those papers, you had her declared incompetent to take control of something you didn't understand." Elaine's voice trembled. "She didn't even tell us. She didn't trust you." That landed like a slap. Silence stretched. Then Rachel exploded. "This is insane. She manipulated the will, probably wasn't even lucid when she signed it. That can be challenged." "She wasn't just lucid," I said. "She was strategic. She registered the oil rights in my name 6 months ago, quietly, legally, and when you all started circling, she made sure I had everything in place." "She knew," I added, softer now. "She knew what you would do." Roger's face flushed dark red. "You think you deserve this. You think being the farmhand makes you entitled to millions." "No," I said simply. "Being her granddaughter did." Elaine's voice cracked. "We're her children." "And she loved you," I said, "but she didn't trust you, and there's a difference." Another pause. Rachel grabbed the papers from my bag, the ones the lawyer had sent home with me. She scanned them, frantic. "This can't be the final version. There has to be a revision, a clause, something." She looked up at me, eyes wild. "You did this. You turned her against us." I shook my head. "No, you did that all by yourselves." Lightning cracked again outside. The power flickered once, then held. Rachel lunged forward, hands on the documents. "You're not taking this. I don't care what she wrote. You're not stealing what should have been mine." I didn't flinch. "Go ahead," I said. "Try." She stopped. "You think a lawyer's going to undo this?" I asked. "You think the public will side with the children who dragged an old woman from her porch, shoved her in a facility, and filed for control before the dirt on her grave even settled?" Roger stepped between us then, his face drained of color. "Let's go," he said quietly. "This is done." Rachel opened her mouth to argue, but something in his voice stopped her. Elaine stared at me a moment longer. "I hope it was worth it," she said. I walked to the door and held it open. It was. One by one, they left. No screaming, no fight, just the sound of tires crunching gravel and a door that shut behind them like the closing of a book. I stood in the hallway long after they were gone, the papers still on the table, the storm shaking the walls. And then I whispered to no one. She knew. She always knew. And now, so did I. The storm didn't last long. By dawn, the sky had calmed to a pale wash of gray-blue, and the only sound left was the soft drip of rain from the porch eaves. I hadn't slept. The adrenaline, the grief, the sheer weight of everything, they didn't leave much room for rest. But something pulled at me. Not dread, something deeper, a memory. Me's voice, faint but steady, from years ago. "If anything ever happens to me, there's something you'll need to find." I hadn't known what she meant. I'd forgotten, honestly, until now. I pulled on my boots, still damp from the night before, and stepped outside into the dew-drenched morning. The farm smelled like wet earth and lilacs. Alive. Wounded. Breathing. I walked past the barn, through the high grass she always refused to cut, toward the old oak tree by the back fence line, the one Me used to call her thinking spot. She loved that tree. Planted it with her father when she was just a girl. And underneath it, years ago, I remembered helping her dig a shallow hole for something she called just-in-case insurance. I'd laughed then. But now my hands were shaking as I dropped to my knees and began to dig. The soil was soft from rain. It gave easily. And then my fingers hit metal. A rusted tin box, sealed with 2 layers of tape and a single knot of twine. I brushed the dirt away gently and pulled it from the ground like I was unearthing a part of her. I carried it to the porch and sat cross-legged like a child, heart pounding like I was about to read a secret not meant for daylight. Inside was a folded piece of paper, yellowed, soft at the edges. I opened it carefully. Me's handwriting, bold, tidy, always in blue ink, covered the page. If you're reading this, then I've gone ahead without you. Don't fret. The coffee's better up there anyway. I smiled through a fresh wave of tears. I knew they'd try. That's what some folks do when fear and greed get too close. They grab for control. But you never grabbed, you held, you showed up, you listened. You fought when you had to, and you let things grow when they needed time. That's why this place belongs to you. Not because of blood, not because of duty, but because you understand what it means to protect something without choking it. My hands trembled. You were always the one meant to keep this land breathing, not just for cows and corn, but for hope, for purpose, for what comes next. At the bottom was one last line, scrawled in a rush. Now build something better. I folded the letter against my chest, the paper damp with tears. She hadn't just left me a farm. She'd left me a mission. A whisper across time that said, "This is yours, but not for you alone." And in that moment, the grief didn't vanish, but it settled, because I finally understood. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It never really was. It was about taking something broken and making it whole again, not for the family that betrayed us, but for the future we could shape. I stood slowly, the box in one hand, the letter in the other. The sun broke through the clouds then, soft and golden. And for the first time since Me died, I felt something like peace. Not because the storm had passed, but because I knew what I had to do next. It started with a hammer and a heartbeat. The barn, once sagging under time and memory, stood tall again, fresh paint warming its weather-worn boards, windows glowing with new light. Inside, the hayloft had been cleared out, the dusty rafters now strung with soft lights, the floor swept clean like an altar ready for a new kind of worship. We named it Me's Haven. The idea came late one night when I sat in the kitchen flipping through Me's old notebooks. She had scribbled down quotes, thoughts, newspaper clippings, pages layered with dreams too big for the time she lived in. One page stopped me cold. "This place should always be a safe stop for someone with nowhere left to go." I read it twice. Then I picked up the phone. It started with volunteers, Ms. Carter from the feed store, Henry, the retired history teacher, a few neighbors who remembered Me's strawberry pies and firm handshake. They showed up with gloves and tool belts, not questions. Then came the social worker I'd gone to school with, Jamie. She cried when she saw the field where she used to ride her bike as a kid. "Foster kids?" she asked, blinking through tears. "Are you sure?" "Yeah," I told her. "Kids who don't get to feel safe anywhere else. They can come here, stay a while, learn, breathe." We turned the barn into classrooms, the stalls into cozy sleeping nooks. The chicken coop stayed. It became an outdoor science lab for the littlest ones. We even kept the goat Me used to call Cinnamon, though he was more bark than bite these days. Saturdays became garden days. We built raised beds, planted sunflowers and sweet peas. Some kids had never touched soil before, never seen a plant grow, never believed they could make something beautiful just by caring for it. But they did. And so did I. I stopped dreaming about revenge. I started dreaming about possibilities. There were hard days, sure. Nights when the paperwork stacked too high, when the roof leaked, when a kid arrived with more anger than language. But Me's words stayed in my chest like armor. Build something better. We hosted weekend classes, farming, cooking, basic carpentry, how to fix a fence post, how to balance a checkbook, how to start over. People came, not for the oil money, not for the land, but for what it had become. A living thing. A second chance. One afternoon, as I watched a group of kids chase each other across the backfield, laughing so hard they couldn't breathe, I realized something I hadn't felt since Me passed. Joy, not just the quiet kind. The kind that cracks you open. The kind that says, "This is why you held on." A volunteer snapped a photo of the kids near the fence line, and when she showed it to me, I laughed. Because behind them, painted across the side of the barn, was Me's silhouette. Henry had done it, from memory. Hat tilted, hands on her hips, that stubborn, loving strength she wore like a crown. I didn't cry. I smiled, because she wasn't gone. She was everywhere, in the clover fields, in the laughter echoing from the barn, in every single act of rebuilding. She didn't just leave a will, she left a way forward. And I walked it, every step stained with the kind of grace that only grows from grief. It had been a year, one full turn of the seasons, each one heavier and more beautiful than the last. I'd learned that grief doesn't vanish. It simply folds itself into your days like a thread woven into every sunrise. But that morning, as I walked the familiar path toward the back pasture, I felt something else. Lightness. I carried a bundle of fresh sunflowers, me's favorite, bright, unapologetic, stubborn in their own joyful way. The hill rose slowly beneath my feet, and at the top, under the same weeping willow where we'd said goodbye, her grave waited. I knelt beside the cross we'd carved from the wood of her old porch swing, the one Roger once tried to throw away because it was too old. Me had loved that swing. Now it marked her resting place with more meaning than marble ever could. I laid the flowers down gently. A breeze stirred the edge of the photo I'd laminated and tied to the wooden cross, a picture of her holding a pie tin, apron dusted with flour, smirking like she knew something we didn't. Maybe she had. "You planned everything," I said aloud. The words didn't echo, they didn't need to. "I thought I was saving you," I whispered. "But it was you saved me." I sat back in the grass, letting the sun soak through my shirt. Birds called overhead. The faint scent of lavender floated on the air, probably from the field we'd planted near the barn last spring. Behind me, kids were laughing again. Even here, her legacy pulsed like a heartbeat. She hadn't just given me a second chance. She'd given the land one, the town one, dozens of kids one. And every time I saw their faces light up when they rode a horse or planted a seed or built a birdhouse that actually stood on its own, I felt her. Not like a ghost, like a shadow in the sun. Always near, never in the way. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the note she'd written, the one I'd kept folded against my chest for months before finally having it framed in the main barn classroom. "Now build something better," I smiled, because we did, and we weren't done yet. As I stood and brushed the grass from my jeans, I felt the wind pick up again, gentle but strong, like a whisper, like a thank you, like a reminder. Legacy isn't land. It's not money, it's not even blood. Legacy is the echo of courage passed down in silence until someone dares to speak it aloud. And I did, for her, for all of us.